Anna Foster stood in the middle of the gleaming showroom at Royal Motors, feeling out of place. Her clothes were simple, a cotton dress covered in splashes of paint from teaching art to children at a local community center. She clutched her worn purse nervously, her eyes scanning the luxury cars around her. The shiny vehicles seemed like treasures in a jewelry box, and Anna couldn't help but admire them, even though she knew she didn't belong in a place like this. Her old Toyota had broken down on the way home from the community center, and the tow truck had brought it here for repairs. The driver suggested she visit Royal Motors to ask about a loaner car, and even though she felt embarrassed about being in such an upscale place, she hoped they could help. Anna slowly approached a sleek black sedan, its smooth surface gleaming under the showroom lights. She ran her fingers along its side, admiring its elegance. She wasn't interested in anything fancy, just something reliable to use while her car was being fixed. Her hands were still covered in the paint she had used with the kids, but she hoped the staff wouldn't mind. She wasn't here for a new car, just a temporary solution. As Anna stood there, quietly wondering how she could ask for help without feeling more out of place, she took a deep breath and prepared to speak to someone. She needed a loaner car just for a few days, but little did she know, the encounter she was about to have would be nothing like she expected. As Anna turned to leave, her heart heavy with humiliation, she noticed someone watching her from across the showroom. Edward Collins, a well-dressed older man, was standing with his client, observing the interaction between Anna and the staff. He looked at Anna for a moment, then stepped forward, his face showing a flicker of recognition. "Is there a problem here?" Edward asked, his voice calm but firm. The staff, already tense from the confrontation, looked up at him with surprise. Maxwell Reynolds, the owner of Royal Motors, quickly approached Edward, his usual confident smile fading. "It's nothing to worry about, just a small misunderstanding," Maxwell said, trying to brush off the situation. Edward, however, wasn't convinced. He looked at Anna, his eyes softening as he recognized her. "Anna Foster, is that you?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine surprise. Anna froze, not expecting to be recognized by anyone here, especially someone as important as Edward Collins. She turned around slowly, trying to keep her composure. "Mr. Collins, it's been a while," she said, offering him a warm but surprised smile. Edward stepped closer, his expression now kind and respectful. "I remember you from that charity event for the Children's Hospital," he said. "You did an incredible job there. How are you?" Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. Edward had been one of the key supporters of the event, and she had spoken with him briefly about her work with children's art education. Edward then turned to Maxwell Reynolds and the other staff members, a knowing smile on his face. "I don't think you're aware of who you're dealing with," he said, his voice carrying a hint of authority. "Anna Foster is one of the most talented artists in the city. She's also a tireless advocate for children's art education. Her work with underprivileged children is well known in our community." The staff stood in shocked silence. Maxwell's face went pale as the realization of their mistake set in. Bradley and Regina exchanged nervous glances, their previous arrogance quickly replaced with embarrassment. Anna, though still feeling the sting of their mistreatment, now stood a little taller, her dignity restored by Edward's recognition. She didn't need to explain who she was. Edward had already done that for her. The showroom, which had been filled with judgment and disdain moments earlier, now buzzed with an awkward silence, as the staff realized the true worth of the woman they had so carelessly dismissed. Maxwell Reynolds stood frozen for a moment, clearly stunned by Edward Collins' revelation about Anna's true identity. He looked from Anna to Edward, realizing just how badly he and his team had misjudged the situation. The room was thick with silence as the staff tried to process the words that had just been spoken. Finally, Maxwell cleared his throat and awkwardly stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of apology. I want to apologize for the misunderstanding, Mrs. Foster," he began, his voice now strained with nervousness. "We were simply following our policies, but I can see now that we have treated you poorly. I truly regret that." Anna stood still feeling the sting of humiliation, but she didn't let it show on her face. She had been dismissed without a second thought, and now Maxwell was offering a weak apology. His words felt empty, though he was trying to fix the situation. Maxwell continued, his tone now softer, almost pleading. "We would be happy to arrange a luxury loaner vehicle for you. Any car from our showroom. It's the least we can do, given the circumstances." Anna shook her head, not wanting to accept any offer that came from this place. "Thank you, but no," she said firmly, her voice calm but filled with the remnants of the humiliation she had endured. "I don't need a loaner car from you. I just want to get my own car fixed and go home. Edward, who had been silently watching the interaction, stepped in with a gentle smile. He understood Anna's reluctance. She wasn't the type to seek special treatment, especially from the people who had just treated her poorly. Maxwell, Edward said with a nod, I understand your offer, but it seems unnecessary. Anna, I would be happy to help you with proper transportation while your car is being repaired. His tone was warm and reassuring, offering something genuine. I have a car service that can take you wherever you need to go until your car is ready. You don't need to deal with this inconvenience any longer. Anna looked at Edward, grateful for his kindness. She had been embarrassed and hurt, but Edward's offer was not just about providing transportation, it was about treating her with respect. She smiled, her relief clear. Thank you, Mr. Collins. That would be very helpful. Edward nodded, his eyes kind. It's the least I can do after what you've been through. With that, the tension in the room began to fade as Maxwell and the staff exchanged uneasy glances, understanding that they had just learned a lesson in humility and respect. The next morning, Anna sat in her small, cozy living room, sipping a cup of tea. Her mind was still replaying the events from the day before, the humiliation at Royal Motors, the rude salesman, and the way she had been treated. She tried to shake it off, but it was hard to forget how she had been dismissed simply because of how she looked. As she thought about it, her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Robert, her husband, who had been away on a business trip in Singapore for the past few weeks. Hey love, I'm finally on my way back. Can't wait to see you. I'll be home soon. Anna smiled at the message. She had missed Robert terribly. Their life had been busy, with Robert constantly traveling for his work, but their bond had always been strong. She replied quickly, her fingers typing out a simple message. I can't wait to see you either. It's been too long. Anna placed her phone down and went back to her tea, still feeling the heaviness of the previous day. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to the events at the dealership. She had tried to ignore it, but it still bothered her. She knew she didn't need their approval, but the whole experience had shaken her confidence a little. Just as she was about to put her phone down again, a sudden sound from outside caught her attention. It was a car pulling up into their driveway. Anna stood up, peering out the window to see who it was. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the car. It was a sleek, shining Bugatti Chiron Super Sport, the car she had only ever dreamed of seeing up close. The engine hummed smoothly as the car came to a stop and the door opened. Out stepped Robert, wearing his usual business attire but with a look of excitement on his face. Anna's eyes widened in surprise. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The Bugatti was not just any car, it was a symbol of wealth, power, and luxury. She rushed outside, her heart pounding. Robert! Anna called out, her voice filled with a mix of shock and joy. Robert turned to her with a smile that seemed to grow wider as he saw her reaction. Surprise? He said, walking toward her with open arms. Anna couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. What is this? Why are you driving a Bugatti? She asked, her voice full of excitement and confusion. Robert chuckled. I thought I'd give you a little surprise. I know how tough yesterday was for you, so I wanted to make it up to you. I've arranged for this car to take us to Royal Motors to sort out the situation with your Toyota. Anna's heart swelled with gratitude and love. She hadn't expected anything like this, but it was just like Robert to go above and beyond to show his support. I can't believe you did this, Anna said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. You didn't have to do this for me. Robert took her hand, gently squeezing it. I wanted to. Let's go to Royal Motors and make sure everything is taken care of, and maybe show them who you really are. As they got into the Bugatti, the car's engine roared to life, and Anna couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The car was beautiful, smooth, and powerful. But what mattered more was the love and support Robert was showing her, reminding her that she was never alone, no matter what. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next, and Anna felt more confident knowing Robert had her back. When Anna and Robert arrived at Royal Motors, the sleek Bugatti Chiron Super Sport turned heads as it pulled into the dealership's parking lot. The staff, who had been busy with other customers, froze in surprise. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Robert step out of the car. Maxwell, Bradley, and Regina all looked at each other nervously as Robert and Anna walked toward the entrance. Robert had always been calm and collected, but today there was a fire in his eyes. He wasn't going to let anyone treat his wife the way she had been treated the day before. As he entered the showroom with Anna by his side, he scanned the room and saw Maxwell approaching, his usual polished smile now replaced with a nervous look. Mr. Foster, it's an honor to have you here, Maxwell said quickly, extending his hand. But Robert didn't take it right away. He looked at Maxwell coolly. "I don't think you understand why I'm here," Robert said in a low voice, his gaze sharp. "I came here to talk about the way you treated my wife yesterday. The way your staff treated her, especially you, Maxwell, was unacceptable." Maxwell's smile faltered and he cleared his throat, trying to recover. "I apologize, Mr. Foster. It was a misunderstanding. I assure you we didn't mean to." Robert cut him off. "No, it wasn't a misunderstanding. You judged my wife based on her appearance, her clothes, and her car. And that's not only wrong, it's disrespectful. Everyone deserves respect, no matter how they dress or what kind of car they drive. Anna's worth isn't determined by those things." Bradley and Regina, standing off to the side, shifted uncomfortably under Robert's glare. Bradley looked down, avoiding Robert's gaze, while Regina stood stiffly, her arms crossed. "We serve a certain kind of clientele here, Mr. Foster," Regina said, her voice defensive. "And we try to maintain a certain atmosphere." Robert's eyes narrowed. "And that's exactly the problem," he said, his voice firm. "You assume that only people who look a certain way or have a certain amount of money are worthy of respect. You've made it clear that you have no respect for people like my wife, and that needs to change." Maxwell looked increasingly uncomfortable, his face pale as he tried to salvage the situation. "We'll do better, Mr. Foster, I promise. We'll make sure to treat all customers with the respect they deserve." Robert stood tall, his voice steady but powerful. "I'm not just asking for apologies. I'm making sure this doesn't happen again. I'm buying a controlling interest in Royal Motors." He paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. "You're going to have to make real changes, starting with customer service. Every customer, regardless of their background or their car, deserves the best service. No one gets treated like this again." Anna looked at Robert, surprised by his words. But deep down she wasn't surprised at all. Robert always found a way to turn things around and do the right thing. "And there's more," Robert continued, looking directly at Maxwell. "I'm going to start a community outreach program. Royal Motors will offer automotive education to underserved schools. The same kids you look down on because they don't have money for a luxury car will have the chance to learn about cars, mechanics, and engineering. I want to give them the same opportunities that you and I had, because we're all worth it." Maxwell, Bradley, and Regina were stunned into silence. They hadn't expected this. Maxwell managed to find his voice again. "Of course, Mr. Foster. We'll start making the changes immediately." Robert turned to Anna, his eyes softening. "I didn't want this to happen, Anna. But sometimes people need to learn a lesson. We're going to make sure this dealership treats people with dignity and respect, no matter who they are." Anna smiled, feeling proud of Robert. The situation, which had started with humiliation and disrespect, was now turning into something positive. Robert was making a difference, not just for her but for everyone who walked through the doors of Royal Motors from now on. As they walked out of the dealership, Robert squeezed Anna's hand. "You're worth so much more than the way they treated you. Always remember that." After Robert spoke, Maxwell stood there for a moment, his face pale. The room was silent, and Anna could see the guilt in Maxwell's eyes. It was clear that he hadn't expected such a direct confrontation, especially from someone like Robert Foster. But as the tension hung in the air, Maxwell finally spoke. "Mr. Foster," he said, his voice now quieter, "I realize now that we've made a huge mistake. We treated your wife badly and we've treated other customers like that too. It's wrong and I understand that now. I promise you we'll do better. We'll start training our staff to treat every customer with respect, no matter who they are or what they look like." Maxwell's words were filled with sincerity, and Anna could tell he truly understood the mistake they had made. He was no longer trying to defend his actions or brush it off. He was finally acknowledging that there was a real problem with how they treated people who didn't fit their idea of a high-end customer. "I'll make sure our policies change," Maxwell continued, his tone humble. "We'll work to improve our customer service and offer equal treatment to all. Thank you for showing us the right way." Edward, who had been quietly observing the entire scene, nodded in approval. He was a man who had seen much in his years, but what Robert had done stood out to him. Edward had always admired Robert for his business acumen, but today he admired him for something even more important: his sense of justice. "Robert, I must say I'm impressed by how you handled this," Edward said, stepping forward with a smile. "Not only did you stand up for your wife, but you're also making sure that things will change for the better. You've done something good today and I fully support your actions." Robert nodded, but his focus remained on Anna. "It wasn't just about standing up for her," he said. "It was about standing up for what's right. Nobody deserves to be treated like that, no matter their background. Edward looked at Anna and smiled warmly. You should be proud of him. And I'm sure you'll continue to do great things in your own right, just like Robert. As the conversation came to a close, Anna felt a mix of emotions. She was grateful for Robert's support, but more than that, she felt empowered by the way he had fought for what was right. It wasn't about the money or the cars, it was about standing up for people who were judged unfairly and showing that respect and kindness were more important than anything else. Anna reflected on everything that had happened. The humiliation she had felt at Royal Motors had been painful, but it had also shown her something important. She was worthy of respect, not because of the car she drove or the clothes she wore, but because of who she was inside. She had a purpose, a passion for teaching art to children, and she didn't need anyone's approval to feel good about herself. She had also learned something about her husband. Robert wasn't just a wealthy businessman, he was someone who cared deeply about fairness and justice. He had used his power to make a difference, and that made her proud. As they walked out of the dealership together, Anna squeezed Robert's hand, feeling more confident than ever. She had let go of the past humiliation and understood that sometimes standing up for what's right was the most important thing a person could do. I'm proud of you, Anna said softly, looking up at Robert. Thank you for always having my back. Robert smiled down at her. Always, Anna. You're worth more than you'll ever know. As the days passed, Anna couldn't shake the feeling of pride that came from standing up for what was right. But as much as she appreciated Robert's support, she didn't want to take advantage of the luxury that came with his wealth. The Rolls-Royce they had used to go to Royal Motors was a beautiful car, and it had turned heads wherever they went. However, Anna didn't feel like it was the car she needed. She didn't want to be defined by material things or the wealth that came with her husband's success. When her Toyota was finally repaired and ready to be picked up, Anna made a decision. She would continue driving her modest, old car, just as she always had. It was reliable, familiar, and tied to her true purpose. Her work at the community center, teaching art to underprivileged children, was where her heart was. That's where she found her true fulfillment, not in luxury cars, but in helping children find their voices through creativity. Robert understood completely when Anna told him her decision. I know you don't need that kind of luxury to feel happy, he said, smiling. But I'll support you in whatever you choose. Robert, despite his immense wealth, had always respected Anna's independence. He never pushed her to change who she was. He admired her for her humility and for staying true to herself, even when she could have easily chosen a different path. Anna had always believed in making a difference with her actions, not by relying on the privileges of wealth. Together they continued to live their lives with integrity. Anna remained dedicated to her work with children, teaching them to express themselves through art. She worked tirelessly to expand her programs, hoping to give more children the chance to experience the joy and freedom that art brought into their lives. For Anna and Robert, real value came from one's actions and character, not from appearances or possessions. They had learned that the most important thing in life was to live with purpose, to treat others with respect, and to always stand up for what's right. As they moved forward, they did so with the knowledge that true wealth was not in the cars you drove, but in the impact you made in the lives of others.